My name is Victoria Reese, and I have relapsing remitting MS. When I talk to African Americans that do have MS, I think they want solutions, answers, they want to be a part of research, but I don't think they necessarily raise their hand to be a part. I don't think they know that they need to. You're not really thinking about what it takes to get those answers, and you don't think that you can maybe be a part of that. It's like a two-part issue where there's maybe a lack of participation, but also a lack of representation.
My name is Lauren Work, and I also have relapsing remitting multiple sclerosis. And I think that kind of is why it's important for us, specifically people of color, to have platforms to tell our stories on. I think a lot of people will find a lot of similarities, and ultimately I think it may lead to earlier diagnoses because people are hearing stories and understanding that their experiences are not just random. Exactly. That this could also mean something, and it's important to really take the time to become really centered in your experiences and what's happening in your body to be able to take those next steps, to go to the eye doctor, to go to your physician. But I think people don't even know how or when to take that first step because those stories aren't available.
I am Damian Washington. I have relapsing remitting multiple sclerosis. Everybody has an MS diagnosis story. Absolutely. And you ask the question, and everyone has a 3-minute at least response, 3 to 6 minutes, and the trials and the tribulations, and I tried this, and I couldn't see. And it's a messy ball that sometimes takes 6 weeks, sometimes it takes 6 months, sometimes it takes a few years, and that's something that is part of this whole having this disease thing, and something that should be appreciated and recognized. And when people speak on it, that's why I'm here for it. I'm like, tell me your story. Okay, tell me your story, and so on, because I know I have my own. So it's just whenever you hear other people's stories and you're like, oh, it wasn't just me.
My name is Shambrika Wise, and I have relapsing remitting MS. Forgive me if this is a blanket statement that may not be applicable to the two of you especially, but I think Black women are just taught to deal with it because we have to deal with so much, and we don't have the opportunity to be human and to feel. And it's like we are often put in a situation where we have to figure it out, especially if we don't have that support system in place to let us feel like there is something wrong with me. This is not just me having a bad day. This is not just me over-exaggerating. Like, there is something wrong, and I need help figuring it out because I don't have all the answers.
There was a short stint in my life where I did not have access to care. I didn't have insurance, and even though they have like co-pay assistance programs and things like that, you think that would apply to people that don't have health care, but really, you still have to get a doctor's note and to end up getting that. But to go to the doctor, you have to pay out of pocket. So I couldn't get any medicine. So this was like 6 months, no medicine, no nothing. It humbled me in a way to realize that if I was not just employed or financially able to pay out of pocket, but if I didn't have access to Wi-Fi, if I didn't have a laptop of my own, if I didn't have a cell phone, I wouldn't have been able to sit on hold for 2 hours to get questions answered. If I wasn't savvy enough to ask those questions, I would have given up. And it made me realize there's so many people that have to go to the library to use a computer or don't have a cell phone. It just let me know that it ain't easy out here. And it's a lot of people that look like us that don't have a lot of those things.
I can identify with the humbling part. I work for the Department of Health and Human Services, and so we are the ACA essentially. Yeah. But when you were told that you need a medication and you've gone through 2, and this third one is $75,000 a year, and you're like, but what? Like, that's almost some of my salary. Like, you've got to be kidding me. Like, it costs that much to take care of something that does not have a cure. Like, who pays that? Who has that to pay? Right. Like,
Once you will pay that next year. as well.
Yeah.
And that's per infusion.
Yeah.
So
And that's not counting the infusion. That's just
Right.
the drug.
But even like co-pays for MRIs, with health insurance. I had one doctor that wanted me to get at the time my current insurance, let's say for example, MRI copay was $250 per MRI. This one doctor wanted me to get 3 MRIs 2 times a year. So that's 6 times $250. I was 25 in LA. Who got that much money to pay for co-pays? And that's the discounted price, That's with insurance. So it can get expensive, So it's just a whole thing. It makes you really think about why people may not be taking care of themselves or may not be on a medication, because it's intimidating, even when you have a job or when you have insurance. Okay.
I love how it was like, we haven't had access to care issues, and then wait a minute.
We actually have a little challenges here already.
it's that it looks different. It's not that it's I don't have access to this doctor. It's that over the course of 9 days, I've spent 12 hours trying to figure out the answer to one question, or I need to figure out how to make these people see that I am not responsible for this $68,000 bill.
Right.
So those are the access to healthcare issues that people on this panel have experienced and have been there and go through it, and we are stronger because of that. Okay.
Yeah. No, it's actually funny you talked about
Lead
the
it.
accounting side of it. I've had issues with that. And
Bruh.
going back and forth with some hospitals, accounting, and you're on hold for, like you said, 2-3 hours, and then they can't get
For
in
the day.
contact with your health insurance company, and so they keep sending you these bills, and then they send it to collections, and you're like, whoa.
As if stress does not already, trigger things in you. You're gonna do this right now.
Emma brought up my petty because I asked for an itemized statement with one of my stays, and I remember I think they charged me for like a roll of tape. I said I did not leave the hospital with a roll of tape. I did not do that. They need to give me my roll of tape. It was just things matter. It definitely put things in perspective on a serious level. It was things matter. This matters. My health matters. How I need to go about having people care for me absolutely matters. So.
Studies show that Black women are less likely to be believed by doctors. There are biases when it comes to dealing with pain in the Black patients versus white patients. What are your thoughts on this?
I've experienced it from the perspective of you're not listening to me. And I think just how my personality is, even though I'm very young, I'm very direct. And I'm not really going to leave until I feel like you truly understand what I'm telling you and what I'm saying to you. And I will navigate around you at the end of the day if I feel like you're not giving me what I need. But I do think that it's tiring. I shouldn't have to do that. I shouldn't have to make sure that you hear me even though I'm speaking to you in the King's English. I shouldn't have to do that. I've definitely experienced it. I think I am very blessed that I am surrounded by people who will push with me and push for me as well. My mother was there when I flew from St. Louis to Chicago when I was first diagnosed, to be there with me, to be in the doctor's office with me. But it's tiring, and you shouldn't be forced to do that. And I understand how people fall back when you are continuously being pushed against a wall. So
I will say it's not ever my specialist nor even my PCPs, because they understand this is somebody that actually knows what she's talking about. We can take it a few notches up and talk to her on the level of research and biological terms, because she has that background. So I think it's almost a level of respect that the ER doctors don't have necessarily, because a lot of ER doctors, no shade to them, because I have friends that are ER physicians, they don't spend that time. They are just meeting you for the first time. And so it's I went to school for this, I know what I'm talking about. You're just probably stressed out, you're probably just tired, just get some rest, take these pills, call me, or actually don't, go see your PCP, have a good night. So I have had that happen where they weren't listening to me, and come to find out when I was able to get a follow-up with my PCP, it was a new onset of a symptom that was related back to my MS, and they were able to go in and find out. And I'm okay, I shouldn't have to have validation that I'm not crazy, but it's nice to have a professional that is a peer of the butthole that made me feel a certain type of way be like, no, there is something really wrong with you, but we can fix that. That's cool. We can fix it now that we know what's wrong.
No, I've got just the support in the household. My wife is someone who helps me get the wind in my sails to have my satisfaction, but I know that this is something that specifically Black women experience. You guys all have your own stories about that. The podcast I listen to, the Myelin and Melanin podcast with Dawn and David, they have their own MS trials and tribulations, and they just, two Black women just spoke about doctors not believing them and all this other stuff less than 5 weeks ago on the internet, if that, because this is a prevalent thing. And as another person to another person, it's like, oh, okay, great. I know what I say is going to get taken at a different face value than you. And you were using the same words.
Right.
And so now the tone comes in this thing, and that there's so other many social aspects to getting your satisfaction.
Yeah.
As specifically a Black woman, that when met with a serious disease like multiple sclerosis, you really have to come to terms with that, and that's part of your experience.
Yeah. I actually have had a nurse ask me if I could relax once. I know.
You have that Black woman laugh right now. She told me that.
Yeah.
But
And I was just,
she didn't know it.
which is just so crazy to me, because even, let's say, even if I was worked up, like, I have a chronic illness. What do you mean? And we are not on the same page. Of course, even if I am worked up, of course I would be worked up. And I feel like it's, when you are a Black woman who is continuously pushing back, it's seen as
Angry, aggressive.
Exactly. The aggressive, angry Black woman who is really, at the end of the day, just trying to protect her body, which is crazy to think about.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's the side of not being believed, being thought as being aggressive in the doctor's office. And I think it's the culmination of it that you are forced to try to find this middle ground that you really shouldn't have to. And I think specifically for Black women, even in just our day-to-day, just navigating spaces, in addition to having a chronic illness, I mean, it's, again, just very tiring.
Yeah.
So my primary care physician was the first doctor to tell me that what my symptoms were probably MS. That was after he told me that I was just stressed. So, I go in with this numbness in my legs, and I get an MRI on my legs, and they don't see anything. And they're like, girl, you crazy. Something's going, what are you talking about? We just did this MRI. It's clear, nothing's going on. You're clearly stressed, and that's why you're not sleeping at night, and that's why, your hair's shedding. Here are antidepressants. And you live in Hollywood, here are antidepressants. So it was like, okay, thanks for the Hollywood Skittles. You know what I mean? Because that's what it is. Like, a lot of people are antidepressants. And they give me this, and I was like, I don't think that's it. I'm not worked up. I don't need to relax. I'm not upset. I don't feel that way. My legs are just numb. Like, what's going on? And it wasn't until I got another MRI, then they saw the lesions, and then they're like, Victoria, hello. We actually think that it's multiple sclerosis. And they printed out a piece of paper, stapled it together, and it was on 3 sheets with a description of what MS was, which they just Googled, printed it out, and gave it to me and told me to go home and study what it was and see a neurologist. So it was like, okay, first I was crazy, now I'm MS. We're like, okay. So, I didn't feel like, I felt like I didn't know, at the time I didn't know that I wasn't being heard. At the time I just was like, well, maybe I am crazy, because my doctor is like, girl, nothing's wrong with your legs. But now, in retrospect, I'm like, I wasn't really being heard, because they could have done a little bit more, because why would you give me an MRI on my legs but not on my spine and brain when I'm talking about numbness? You know what I mean? Why would you give me antidepressants? How does that go together? So, in retrospect, we live and we learn. Because MS is a bit rare in our community, were there times when you felt alone because of it?
Actually, when I was first diagnosed, yes, because while we've talked about having friends and family around us, to my knowledge at that time, I was the only one that did have it. I talked to I call her my big sister, I've known her for several years now, talked to her almost daily, and she had actually opened up to me about some of her symptoms, and it was almost a year later that she found out she had it too. So she was experiencing symptoms like before I was even diagnosed, and she was opening up to me about certain things that were becoming an issue for her. But I'm like, yeah, I was doing exactly what we just talked about, like passing it on. It's just being life, stressed, being tired. She's a mother of twin boys, and she's a wife, and she worked full time. I'm like, girl, you need a vacation. Like, it's okay. But at the same time, you're not gonna say my friend has what I have. Like, who does that, right? But then when she started talking and I started listening, and I'm like, you need to go talk to your doctor and make sure it's not what I have, because it sounds a lot like MS. And sure enough, almost a year to the day later, she was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. And so it's been definitely a hard thing to navigate for both of us, because we're both stubborn. We both don't want to know our limitations. For me, running was scary because I didn't know if I was going to be able to run the same again, because my legs were an initial issue for me. But I made it to where, like, okay, there is a certain time that I give myself to run, and I will not run in the summer anymore, not outside anyway. And if I do, I have to make sure it's a certain time of the day so I don't get overheated. So it's knowing your limitations, and then opening up, to that person that you have to connect with that can identify, certain things with you that just the normal regular person that doesn't have MS. I feel like that gives you community, and that makes your community safe, essentially.
I personally did feel alone when I was diagnosed. It was 2012, and I didn't know anybody else that had MS. When I did research, there was like 3 to 4 sentences on websites that covered African Americans specifically. The last study that had been done, according to the website, was 1990, but it was 2012. They talked about how there were, out of 100,000 articles published about MS, that there were only 600 on African Americans. So it was just like blatantly not really talking or checking for Black people, rather. And when I saw that, I was like, okay, I need to do something. So then I publicly announced that I had MS on social media, because I'm a millennial and that's what we do. And I wanted to find community, and I also kind of wanted to find support, even though I was like kind of, not with my friends and family. So when I did that, people started to introduce me to their cousins and stuff like that. So then I found this online community through my DMs. And then I started going to like MS walks and different events. And I still felt very alone, because there was just not a lot of, Black people there. And I'm like, I just don't think that me of all people would get this, and it's not a lot of people. I feel like a lot of people get this, and they're just not here. So then I started to, seek out Black people, because I had never really met another person with, that was Black with MS. I went to one support group meeting, found 3. And then I was like, okay, this is cool. We all like talked to each other at the end, and we all kind of migrated towards each other. But it was just a natural thing. Like, we all wanted to meet each other because we all felt the same way. So then I started a support group, an online support group for Black women with MS, because I'm like, nobody's gonna do it for me. If I need community, I have to create community. So I ended up creating it. So I felt very alone, very, very alone. And I know that there's so many people, every person I talk to that introduces themselves to me, or their cousin introduces themselves to me, they're like, I never met another Black person. Or they look at me and they're like, you are a real Black girl. Like, you a real Black girl with MS. Like, not just the color of your skin. You went to HBCU. You are all around Black girl, and you have MS, and you are connecting other Black people like a family reunion. Like, you get Blackness and you have MS. You just so happen to have MS, So there's a lot of people that feel alone, and it's so unfortunate because it's 2020 and it's still people out there that have not met another Black person that have MS. Are you active in the MS community? And if so, why is it essential for you to be?
Yeah, so I just started to really engage with the MS community, and it was largely because of the fact that Victoria and I are building something together specifically focused to women that are so connected to me and my experience. And so I feel more comfortable engaging with the community because I have the support of a community that is just like me. But I do have to say, sometimes it's very hard. Like Victoria was saying, when you go to those MS walks, when you go to some of those patient advocacy events, they are very homogenous, and it's sometimes very hard to feel like you belong there, which is why it's so important for us to have these type of discussions, for us to build community, for individuals to feel safe in a space, but also to take up space as well and make ourselves known that we are here, and although we have this disease, we are still so dope. I know you love that word. So dope. And,
Dope.
And are really thriving with this disease still. And I think that is how I want to be engaged with the community and really changing how it looks. Yeah.
I'm active in the MS community. Putting a video on YouTube started to become an important thing to me. And when I was healing from the MS spinal tap that went south, I was like, yo, when you get back on your feet, what's gonna happen, bro? What are you going to do to get on this television for longer than 30 seconds? Yeah. And I started talking to YouTube. Eventually that became the MS community. And that's my friend, that's my homie, that's like a mom in Southern California. She and I text like schoolgirls, just cuts. There's people all over the world that I have this contact to, there's a very special connection with, and that the community has brought that to me. Yeah, it's ridiculously super important to me.
I chose to be active like by accident, you know? It was me trying to I was seeking community. And then by seeking community, I built this community. Then it was like, oh, I'm the leader?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, okay. Sure. And then, you start to be kind of known in the community, and then you start to see the work that needs to be done. And then you're like, oh, okay, this wasn't a problem, a Victoria problem. This was a real problem. And then you start to work with different organizations, and you start to do research, you start to talk to doctors, and you really start to be at the table. Then when you're at the table, you're like, all right, I gotta be at this table, and I gotta help you talk to other people like me, because that's why you're not talking to us. You don't know how to talk to us, or you don't know, some of the pain points, or whatever. So there's help that's needed. So like, we need to be at the table. And then just across the board, we see in society, in culture, pop culture, why representation matters across the board. But in this space that's so personal to us, you're like, okay, you actually kind of need me to be at this table for real. I need you to have me here, but you need me here so I can help you maneuver this conversation. And that's just, with any race, with any generation, there just needs to be representation so that, people feel seen and welcome and get answers and feel like these resources are actual resources.
Yeah. I think for me, I, was starting to kind of be a late bloomer with the MS because number one, I had to be accepting of it. I had to not be angry because I had this thing and that was obviously not going to go away. So I started to write pieces, I'm like, you a millennial, basically. I came out on social media, and it was honestly because I felt strength even after going through so much. 90% of the lives that we live on this earth are not for us, it's for other people. And so I found a voice through this thing that annoyed me so bad. And I'm like, wait, I can help people with this. So, for Disability Month, because my birthday is October 2nd, I'll do something on LinkedIn and I'll say, hey, don't shun the person that's in the wheelchair. Just because you don't think they can change a light bulb like you, give them the tools that they need to be a better light bulb changer than you.
Absolutely.
So it's I try and give people a different way to think about not only people with MS, but people with invisible diseases. Because sometimes the people that have the disease are our own worst critic. I have been that person, I am not getting a disability placard, but I need one in Texas during the summer. Yeah. So it's gotta get off your pride.
Get one.
Gotta get off your pride.
Get one because, sorry, but get one. The reason why is because, we have to fight. like we have to lobby. I went to lobby for some certain, things that affect people that are affected by MS, and certain things like placards and how many parking spaces per lot are disabled. Like for disabled people, we have to fight for those things. So thank you, good, because when we don't push for it, then it's taken away. So get it. Get it.
And we fight for the people that they're not us. They're much worse off than us.
Exactly.
You can't
It's
do
not,
it for them.
yeah. Absolutely. But no, for you too. You don't know what type of day you're gonna have next week. You actually don't. Neither do I. And that is what, unfortunately, MS is. All right. We'll wrap up. But on this last question for each of you, what advice would you give to another African American individual that lives with MS? I'll start with you.
It's okay to be angry. It's okay to be disappointed in the fact that you have something that you can't fix, especially if you are a doer, if you are a problem solver. It's okay to now trust that there is a bigger plan regardless if you can see past this thing or not. Find your support. There's support. There are people out there that, have never met you, but that would totally be there for you because we know what it is. Like, we understand. We've gone through that walk. We've gone through that initial scare. Like, I'm the one that told the doctor, like, no, you need to run all the tests again because that's not right. So I'm pretty sure that if this happened, there are people there that understand and can empathize, not just sympathize, but empathize with you. But just know that this is not it for you. Like, thank God we have the technological advances and the medicinal advances that we do today that weren't around 30 years ago. It's not the end of the road. It's just going to be the beginning of a different road, and you have everything that you need in place to take, your charge and to make sure that you are best equipped as possible.
Yeah, I'm just nodding on that and thinking on that, and that's beautiful. That's essentially what I would say to someone that's you now have a different path and walk it.
Definitely, it's okay to not be okay. I think being able to put your pride aside, being able to accept the disease for what it is, and if you need to be sad for a little while, it's okay to be sad for a little while, but you're not required to, you're not, and whatever higher power you live in, you're not Jesus, you are human, and it's okay to not be okay.
I would say for an African American person diagnosed specifically, realize and understand that you don't just have MS, you have Black and you have MS. And that culturally we don't cope. We don't allow time to heal. So, to your point, go through your process. Be angry, then be sad for yourself, then be embarrassed, and then, come out of it feeling like you have a superpower. And I call MS my superpower. And sometimes people look at me crazy, but I say it because it's made me stronger in so many ways. It's allowed me to empathize with people on many levels. It's allowed me to build a community of my own. So I created a family, you know what I mean? I went and found, so that means that no matter where I go, I could go to another country, I could create a community. I could do that from anything, It's taught me how to listen to my body and love myself despite. So it's all these things that's given me that I don't think anything else would have, It's an unfortunate thing, but it gave me so many things. So just to a Black person specifically, culturally, we're not taught to do these things because our families just don't. So just understanding, just heal and heal. Heal.
I only want to say one thing that I found to be really helpful too. Go get you a therapist. It is okay to have mental counselors, mental health, mental everything. Be that person that is okay with seeking help if you need that. And it is okay to start from rock bottom and climb back up because you can get back up to the top for sure.
And that's all the time we have for today. I want to thank each and every one of you for being here and being so transparent and honest and open about your experience with MS. See you next time.